Welcome to Pet Business Disruptors. I'm Clayton. I'm here today with Sam Hanbury, who is the founder or co-founder of Doggy Doggy Yum Yum, a ice cream brand which has already got incredible traction, even though it's only a one product in the pet industry company. Thanks a million for coming on, Sam.
Oh yeah, I'm really happy to be here, Clayton. Thanks.
Yeah, no. So tell me about, because I understand from when we spoke before that you're actually a trained, is it gelato-ist?
We are a human ice cream company. So I mean that's what we do. I mean, shall I just give you some sort of history of why on earth we're even in the pet food industry at all? So we have our own outlets. We have 6 of our own outlets in Dorset on the coast. And in about 2018, we found people coming to the kiosks and buying ice cream for their dogs. And we just thought, oh my God, is that right? Or should people be buying ice cream for dogs? So we quickly checked, realized that, dogs are lactose intolerant, or some dogs can be lactose intolerant, and thought, well, this is not right. We can't be doing this. My wife Annie is a trained gelatieri. We sort of say she's a real sort of food scientist, I suppose. And she then went away and looked at all the different sort of issues and behind it. And basically, we decided to create an ice cream for dogs that was specifically designed for them. So it has no milk at all. So it's a dairy-free ice cream. And we don't think that we didn't see any on the market that were like that. There are people that use lactase inhibitors, which so you sort of start with milk and then inhibit that milk. But that's sort of a complicated way of going about things. We thought, let's just use coconut milk, banana, because banana is delicious, and then peanut butter, because dogs love peanut butter, but use the same sort of quality of ingredients that we're using in our human ice cream. And we're producing a very high-end human ice cream. So we were using the same sort of quality to start making the product.
Yeah, and I think interestingly, it's interesting that you've gone from that so obviously being a human ice cream company, and suddenly you've gone from that to, let's make a dog ice cream, but you've also got crazy traction on it. I mean, you're in Pedigree Wholesale. I just browsed through the internet to see where you were being sold, and a number of my old customers, some of whom are raw pet food stores, that sort of stuff, are selling your product. How did you get from the point where it's sort of like, we've got some customers coming down and they're giving their dogs some ice cream, to actually we're going to make it and then it's going to just explode across the country?
God, I mean, I think dog owners care. I think probably more than human, they care more about what they're putting into their dogs than they care about what they're putting into themselves. And so, we were already starting with quite a strong sort of a strong tailwind, I suppose, because we did have a nice set of ingredients. Actually, I'm just going to talk about ingredients for a second, and then I'll come back to your question. So we've kept on developing the product, and one of the things that you'll hear a lot of talk about at the moment is ultra processed food. So this whole idea of like what is actually going into food, and there's a book by Chris Van Tulleken called Ultra Processed People, talking very much about emulsifiers, stabilizers, what's really going into the food. And with Doggy Doggy Yum Yum, ice cream needs a stabilizer in order to basically bond it together, and it can require an emulsifier and the typical emulsifier that people use is a mono and diglyceride of fatty acid. Now that is a terrible phrase. Nobody wants to hear the words mono and diglyceride of fatty acid anywhere near their food, and so we again have designed the sort of chemicals out of the product. So we use a tiny bit of vegetable fiber and no emulsifier at all to sort of stabilize the product. So I think people who've been sort of watching Doggy Doggy, I mean, and it's a small percentage of people maybe who care, but people who do care can see that we're just using 5 ingredients, and they're pretty clean ingredients. They're very clean ingredients. So I think that helps. That probably gets us into the buyers. I mean, the buyers may say, "Oh, I like that combo, that what's going on there." Why people at a broader level like it is, I think, because the brand is cute. We consciously didn't use our own name, which is Babu Gelato. We created a completely separate brand identity. We used a company in Leeds called Robot Food to help design the branding. And we think it's lovely. They've actually designed us a suite of dogs, each of which has a different color, a different character. And so as we develop the brand, you'll see a lot more of the brand assets. But what you can possibly see behind me is one of our pavement signs. And we give those to every customer, the trade customer that takes it. And it's super popular. So we just find it's a sort of combination of it being a decent product. So it's an incredibly long-winded answer to your question, but it's a decent product. And then it's branding that feels playful and stands out.
Yeah, I think also we've had a big move when it comes to ingredients, that people are more aware that there should be less ingredients in our pet food. And you're right, we care a hell of a lot more about what goes into our dogs' diets than what we do with our ours. I mean, I eat absolute garbage, like, continuously. And yeah, like, when it comes to my dogs, I'm very religious around making sure they have the right supplements, making sure they have the right quality dog food. But yeah, it's totally unbalanced from my perspective. But I think that definitely makes a big difference. And I think, like, I'm not an expert on the ice cream market, but there's a number of brands out there, and I think whatever it is you're doing, you're doing something which is right, because just the sheer amount of traction you've been getting, you wouldn't be able to get it in what is, I would say, almost a relatively crowded marketplace already otherwise.
Well, actually, that's a really interesting point. And because we do quite a few trade shows, both on the pet industry and obviously on the sort of the human ice cream side of things. And we always showcase Doggy Doggy Yum Yum. And it's fascinating how many people are like, "Oh, dog ice cream." And you think, my God, surely you knew about this. I mean, this has been out there for 5-10 years. There's been tons of, it's not, to me, you can't go to a beach and not see a sign for dog ice cream. And yet, there's still a lot of people. And I think it's what we all probably forget about is the adoption cycle is so long. It really is it probably takes 20 years to get from, the early adopters who are totally on board with something, whether it's what's going into their product or the brand, to people who, to the mass market, who take quite a long time sometimes to catch up with it. So although it's popular, actually, I think there's a long way to go with Doggy Doggy Yum Yum. At least for because we and possibly it's quite an unusual product because it's very crossover, because we're not only selling it to pet shops, but we sell it to basically to everybody. So we're selling to pubs, to restaurants, to cafes, to garden centers, to tourist attractions, because the whole, everywhere wants to be pet friendly these days, or so many places want to be pet friendly. And it's such a nice little thing to give. And it's also incredibly visual. So, I mean, we've got 2 flat coat retrievers, and you give them most treats and they just it's gone. I mean, literally, there is no time period short enough to calculate, to say how quickly they eat a treat. But with an ice cream, they get it, they need to get it between their paws. And then you get that sort of very Instagrammable moment of them getting right down and licking it and loving it and, rolling it around on the floor. And so I think there's, it's a lovely treat from a selling point of view, because the end customer loves the product. It's great fun. Everyone's taking photographs, and we just get bombarded with photographs. Like, look at my dog eating Doggy Doggy Yum Yum, and they're always incredibly cute photographs, and that's brilliant. But it's something that people should have if they don't have. Well, preferably Doggy Doggy, but a dog ice cream. They're missing a trick, I think. And
I think also, a big part of the growth has been things like Instagram and TikTok. I mean, and also, I know that you probably won't like want to go into this too much, but people do obviously talk about the benefits of it in terms of like the calming side of a dog licking something. So if you're out in public, your dog's a bit nervous, it's a bit stressed out, just giving it an ice cream and actually letting it calm itself down. The licking movement is a very soothing part of it. And I know it's not like a treat which has huge functionality, but in terms of actually like being out with your dog and having something like an ice cream at the park, it can definitely help them actually just like, if they're overexcited, calm down, but also if they're nervous, just sort of de-stress a little bit as well.
Yeah. I mean, I'm delighted you say that. I mean, I just don't want to make sort of false claims. You know, this is a treat. It should be enjoyed as a treat. And I think there's the danger of getting into bogus science about it, sort of thing, but I agree. I mean, we see dogs just happy with it. Yeah. It's a nice product. And
And I found interesting as well that you used the Doorwest keepers mix in it as well, which I think is a nice touch. And I know it's not the same as, you know, if your dog actually really needs keepers mix, like putting it on the dog's food, but I do think it's a nice touch to actually have something somewhat beneficial.
I mean, Doorwest is we love Doorwest. When Annie and I set up Baboo, I think, to use a technical term, we said we're going to have a no arsehole policy. So we're just going to work with people we like, whether our suppliers or our customers or whatever. We just want to work with nice people. Life is too short to work with tricky people, I think. And Doorwest are an incredibly nice company. They're like 5-10 miles down the road from us here in Dorset. And from the moment we started talking to them, they've just been really nice to deal with. And it's obviously a cracking product. I mean, we put a very small amount in Doggy Doggy Yum Yum. So we make we don't really want to make any health claims about that. But, you know, we definitely encourage people to use it as a supplement because, I mean, we use it with our dogs. And if you use it with the right supplement, you get a nice glossy coated happy dog. So it's a lovely product that we use. Yeah.
I mean, Doorwest as well. Look, I don't know them personally, but I just know, as obviously on a professional basis, that they have been doing supplements right for a hell of a long time.
I think 75 years is what it says on their website.
Yeah, and their stuff is very good quality. I mean, I've used a lot of their products over the years, and I think the quality is always fantastic on their stuff. So it's nice that you have that relationship with them because it is in my opinion, like one of the most reputable companies in the industry.
I mean, it's a really interesting, coming as a total outsider to the industry. I'm really impressed by how many good companies there are in the industry. I mean, I know, you know, there are some dominant players that perhaps aren't so great, whatever. But, you know, I just, every time I go to a trade show, I'm astonished how many guys are really trying to do it right. I think, you know, much more possibly than the industry I'm in normally.
I think what's different about the pet industry compared to others is just the level of passion a lot of people have. And I think it brings people in. I think, like myself, for example, I do this not for the money. I've always done it because I love the industry. And I think it makes you want to push the envelope a little bit further because you do love the industry. And look, you know, because I love animals, I love my dogs. So it's kind of, it naturally pushes me to push the envelope a little bit further all the time. And I think if you're selling something like, I don't know, copy paper or, you know, or even standard ice cream, you maybe wouldn't necessarily have that. I mean, if you say, I really, really love ice cream and that's all I care about, I mean, that sounds like a bad thing generally, to be honest.
No. I mean, I don't want to be negative about the ice cream business. I was just sort of laughing though that I was at I was at a consumer fair last month, and there was a company selling ice cream next to us, and it said genuine Italian gelato. And I went up to them and said, "Oh God, that's really interesting. You know, we do gelato too. And you know, where do you get it from?" And it was just a sort of bog standard local, I mean, sort of mass produced ice cream. And I'm like, well, you can't just say, you know, Italian gelato and then sell a mass-produced ice cream. But I don't know. We live in a funny, which is so difficult, because then for us who are trying to do something genuine, it's like, well, how do we differentiate ourselves? Like what? And so it becomes that sort of thing is quite frustrating, I think. And I don't know. I've been really impressed by the dog industry, the pet industry so far.
Because I guess the other thing as well, like how you differentiate yourself, is you make your own products. You don't like white label as well, which is a big thing, because obviously within every industry now, white labeling has become massive. Have you ever white labeled, or is it always?
So when we started, we didn't have the capacity to make it. We were making so much of our own ice cream, we just didn't have the capacity to do Doggy Doggy Yum Yum. So we white labeled it to a manufacturer. And I think it's a personal choice. And I know quite a few of the guests you've had on your podcast make their, have outsourced the manufacturing, and I respect that. But for us, it left Annie and me so uncomfortable as to like what was really, how much control did we have? Everything from, the quality of the ingredients to the amount that was going in to how it was being stored. Because obviously ice cream is incredibly, it does need to remain very firmly in the cold chain. But even more than because ice cream melts at about -8, -9, you've got that cold chain's got to be really rigorously managed. And then often the distributor will say, right, we need the product, the pallet delivered between 11 and 12 on a Tuesday or something. And if we're in control of the whole process, then that's something we can do. If somebody else is involved with the process, it's just that much more difficult to, I don't know, have the confidence. I just quite like to be able to look people in the eye and be like, yeah, we made this. And if it's not right, come to me and we'll sort it out. And there's nobody else that can be sort of blamed in that process. It's a completely direct relationship. And that's much more how I like, I think because we are a high quality ice cream maker anyway, it didn't make sense for us to have it outsourced. So we've had it in-house now for a year, and it just works. I'm just so much more comfortable with it as a product. And it's why we're now going to add some other flavors and things like that, because we can sort of spin out from that.
It's interesting because I'm a bit of an obsessive, and I've outsourced work over the years, and in terms of like product production, even when you like outsource, I had a product, I had my own molds, and I outsourced it to a plastic manufacturer. They produce it, and then it never comes back right. You always get mistakes, and you get like problems, and you're just like, you feel like if I did this myself, like I could feel easier about taking responsibility for this, because like we're very aware that like a big part of what we do is about being excellent from end to end. The product has to be excellent, but everything about the whole service has to be excellent as well, especially when we're commanding premiums. And I think it's always difficult when you outsource part of your production cycle to somebody else, and then they don't take the same care that you would yourself. So, I totally get like the stress behind white labeling something, and why if you can do it yourself, you can always feel much happier about it.
We would get into that sort of position where, Pedigree distribute our product for us, and Pedigree put in a lovely big order, and it would be like, yay, brilliant, and call up the white label guys, go, could you ship this by on this date? And they'd be like, well, no, we haven't made it. He said, but I thought you had made it. You told us you had 3 pallets. Oh no, it was only 1. I was like, and suddenly you're like, well, no, we're going to let our big customer down. And life's too short to have that level of stress of arguing and then apologizing and everything. We just have it here. We've got a nice big frozen container that only has Doggy Doggy in it, and then we just ship it out when we need, and it's just nice, straightforward.
But also, what your own limits and capacities are as well. I think like when you're using third parties for anything, you kind of feel in your own head that there's like this limitless sort of like bandwidth you can tap into sometimes. But then when you actually, and you know what it's like, you know what salesmen are like. Salesmen will always tell you that limitless bandwidth is always there for you. But then when you actually try and tap into it, it's a very different prospect. When you actually have the order in your hand, you're like, yeah, 3 pallets, please. And they're like, oh, that could take a month. You know, it's like, and you're like, I need it in a week, you know, but.
It's them also saying, oh, we can't get hold of the ingredient. And I'm like, well, why didn't you bloody tell me? Because I can get hold of it. Like, tell me. You know, yeah, I mean, we keep a lot of ingredients here on site. We've got a whole sort of warehouse now full of ingredients just to keep all those stress levels down so that, you know, if we do need to manufacture quickly, we've got the key ingredients ready to go. So there's none of that sort of letting the customer down.
No. So going through a wholesaler, obviously, look, I was a wholesaler for a long, long time. How do you find that has added to your business generally? Because I'm obviously a bit biased. I always think that wholesalers bring a lot to companies, but
yeah, I mean, I think they do. I think so we use wholesalers for the pet industry wholesalers. We also use not very many, but on the ice cream side. But they sell a lot of doggy to restaurants, pubs, things like that. And what I'm always trying to persuade them is what I think is an incredibly logical model, but it obviously requires a lot of trust. And the model that I want is for them to tell me who their customers are and who their prospects are, and then we can deal with them and we can send out information, we can send out point of sale, we can support them, we can obviously deal with complaints, anything like that. But the distributor, they who have 8,000, 10,000, 100,000 products, whatever, they don't have the sale. They're not doing the sales. They're doing the execution. And that to me is a lovely model. I mean, obviously, it requires a huge amount of trust. And I imagine if somebody from Pedigree was listening, they'd be sort of slapping their head, saying, well, why on earth would we give you, you know, the customer list? But actually, it does work because then we can keep those guys sweet. You know, when we release a new product, I mean, we're only a one product company on the Doggy side, but we won't be for long. And, you know, when we release a new product, we can engage with them. We can send out samples. We can do all of that. And that's good for the distributor. You know, it's a free lunch for the distributor. We do the work and they get the pickup in business. So I think that's the perfect model. So I'm not I don't want to go around the distributor. I just want to work with them in a more flexible model. I think that's the perfect model to me.
Yeah, look, I know from my own experience as a wholesaler is that wholesalers tend to be very guarded about their customer lists. And I think, like, you know, just talking from my own experience, I can think of 2 suppliers I had. One was a major supplier. The other one was one I put a lot of work into as a new brand who like pushed themselves forward. And both of them, when they had an offer from a bigger wholesaler to go exclusive, ditched us. And I have a huge amount of resentment for those companies now. But also, by the same token, I also do agree that, like, my job as a wholesaler is to facilitate and not to sell. And I think with both the products, which I got upset about, is because I was actually selling the products myself and actually pushing forward the brands because I actually liked them. And then once I actually hit a critical mass with them, then other wholesalers wanted to get exclusivity, and I was seen as more regional, let's say, than national, in terms of strength anyway. I was national, but my power was sort of in the southeast rather than the whole country. So yeah, I do get it. It's difficult because it's almost like the wholesalers, they do like transfer orders, but they kind of don't want to give you the leads to go and get them. And it's a weird balance where it's sort of like, well, if I go out and get transfer orders, they might not actually be using you as a wholesaler. And then I've got to then work with another wholesaler. So, you know, in the UK, we've got Pedigree, we've got Vital, we've got Seabridge, we've got, you know, Best Pets. We've got all these different wholesalers out there. And, you know, ideally as a brand, because you're sort of tied in with Pedigree, you want to be sort of serving their market and not actually then going into a store which doesn't use them, because then you end up having to serve them direct. And I don't know if you really have the model for that at the moment.
So the complexity obviously is the cold chain. So what makes our business so much more complicated is, if a pet shop in Edinburgh wants, a case of Doggy Doggy, well, it's going to cost us literally 150 quid to get it to them, and the case is 18 quid or something. So the model just doesn't work. So that's why we need to use distributors throughout the whole thing. We are using now dry ice. We're using a dry ice company to help send smaller orders. We can fulfill smaller orders direct if they're not pedigree customers. And actually we're completely neutral to it, because we basically end up making the same margin either way. So we don't really mind either way. Because of the frozen element to it, we'd much rather just keep working with distributors. But it's that lack of communication that you just sort of slightly feel you're whistling in the wind, and then this is not a pedigree issue, but with other distributors we've had, you'll suddenly get this customer saying, well, we're never using you again because we've asked for point of sale 10 times and you've not sent it. And we're like, well, you didn't ask us. You asked the distributor and they never passed that message on. Please don't be annoyed with us. We'd love to give you point of sale, but we can't do it without knowing. And so that's really tricky. So that's why having some form of direct communication just means we can strengthen the thing for the customer. Again, not necessarily so much for Doggy Doggy, although we'd like to do this. We can also, come and do tastings in the shop, things like that. So if we know who it is, then, we do this a lot in sort of garden centers and things. We'll pitch up and just toss out, freebies to people because it gets them on board. So, if we know who the customer is, that's a total win-win for both sides, because, who doesn't love something for free, but it's building branding for us. So,
and look, especially during the summer, like dog ice cream sells like mad. And if you're in a high footfall area, you can really get people on board and, talk about the benefits. And if they've got their dog with them, you can they can enjoy the ice cream and that sort of stuff. And, I've found personally stores that promote ice cream, especially in the warm weather, sell absolutely tons of it. So it's a real win-win.
Interestingly, on the freezer side, I don't know whether you're about to go there, but the freezer side's quite, technical for us in that there's been obviously this explosion of freezers, but sort of chucking us in one of those impulse look down freezers, it can get very lost because it's just a small 125 ml tub and it can sort of get lost in the mix of everything else. And so what we think is actually you want if you can, just like a shelf-sized freezer unit, not very big, that just holds that's sort of eye height or, sort of chest height. So it's a real sort of impulse thing. And I think that's something we're working with a company that rents them to us for six quid a week, I think, and we would just rent them on to the end customer, and that's a really nice little thing. So it's very cheap. That's 4 tubs a week you need to sell to sort of cover the cost of it. But it actually isn't taking up valuable floor space. You just sort of find a tiny bit of shelf. The thing's only 50 by 50 by 50 or something, but you can stick 3-4 boxes of Doggy Doggy in there, and then off you go. So I think there are ways that also you can maximize the sales, because it's so easy for me to talk as a manufacturer all the time, but actually what you the pet shop want is sales per square inch, foot, whatever you call it, and actually a freezer can take up quite a bit of space that could be more valuably used doing something else.
Yeah, and I suppose if you've got, let's say, a freezer which is used primarily just for meat, for example, it's very hard then to make it look good, I guess, within that melee. I've seen them before where people just have them on like one of those sort of like wire grill trays which just sit on top, or I know some companies give away whole small freezers and that sort of stuff. But again, it's like it's overkill unless it's.
I think it's slightly overkill actually, and you can build in bad relationships if you do that potentially. I mean, again, I'm not talking about Doggy Doggy Yum Yum so much, but on our ice cream side, if you sort of slightly force a freezer on somebody and then actually their sales are not, the size that the freezer is, then you're like, well, why did you take the big freezer? And they're like, well, you started it. And we always want to have a really happy relationship. And I think therefore, sometimes the freezers, or what happens is people end up using the freezer for other stuff. And you're like, well, that's not really what we started. That's not why we gave you the freezer. That can create some ill will along the way as well.
Put their shopping in from Iceland and that sort of stuff. And before you know, you've got all kinds of crap in there. But no, it's quite interesting. Having a shelf one, it's just obviously it's thinking where to put it within the store. Because I think, and again, look, I could be wrong, but I feel like in the summer you're going to absolutely kill it. But then you also have the winter months where people, even though it's beneficial all year round and the dog wouldn't care if it was a hot day or a cold day, I think mentally people associate ice cream with the summer. So it's trying to like put it somewhere that
Well, I mean, if the deal, our view is if the deal's right, give it back to us. We've actually got sort of two models on this. There's a summer deal and an all year round deal. So depending on which way, because I do think the shelf space is so valuable, and actually it really upsets me if I go somewhere and see it sort of, really miserable looking freezer that's all, iced up and everything, because that's not doing our brand any good. It's not doing the product any good either. So, you do want to make it work and you want the customer to be happy.
No, for sure. No, it's interesting. And like because that's the other thing is like getting freezers out there through, let's say, wholesale chains, like, that must be a bit of a challenge as well. I mean,
well, that's why I keep coming back to sort of like where the relationship needs to sit. That we need the pet shop to say to us, yeah, we think we'd like a freezer, we'd like some point of sale, whatever. We then have the conversation, work out. Obviously, there needs to be a level of volume that makes economic sense, but within that, and then we just say, right, buy from Pedigree or buy from whoever, and that's. To me, that's a really simple model, but it doesn't always work that way. But that should be a very elegant model within reason.
No, for sure. And for me, that makes sense. It's just obviously it's just getting people. It's just developing that infrastructure and getting people on board with it. It's because the trouble is it's not like years ago where you could literally just put pet shops into yellow pages and you just get all the pet shops up in the area. It's very complex now because there's a lot of, like I said, a lot of raw feeding stores, there's a lot of different variations on pet stores, and actually tracking them down, it's like almost a full-time job, of actually just dieting down all these people. I've been doing this for donkey's years, and yet there's still tons of stores out there I've never ever been to and never seen. So, it's.
I was just going to say, what we're lucky about is that we don't just sell to the pet stores, that we're selling obviously to the tourist attractions, everything else. So we've got this nice sort of broad range. But the pet shops are good when it works. Yeah, very good.
I mean, how do you find like going into, let's say, what I call pet industry adjacent stuff? So there's been a massive boom in like pub snacks, for example. There's been a few different brands out there who have brought out, let's say, pub brands. And obviously, I think you said you're in a lot of farm shops and garden centres. How are you finding the traction through there compared to, let's say, traditional pet?
I mean, it's what's the right answer to that? I think it's actually like anything. It's about the commitment. Like if somebody takes it seriously, they get a pavement sign out there, they've got the thing displayed or they're talking it, then it sells like hotcakes. But if you've sort of buried it deep in a freezer, nobody knows about it, then yeah, it's a bit of a waste of time. I mean, I think you've got to commit to it. And then it will do well. But it is a summer product. I mean, you're totally right on that. You're kidding yourself if you think that you're going to sell very much in the winter.
It's interesting because it really is like for stores. I think it's like one of the great upsell products as well, because my other half, she worked in the chain pet store, and they used to have like a freezer full of ice cream, but it would only sell if she was to like when they got to the counter say, "Oh, nice out there today. Did you get your dog some ice cream yet?" And they'll go, "Oh, ice cream for the dog." And then you say, "Oh, go through the whole licking and that sort of stuff." And people would buy. It was such an easy sell for her. Like, she used to sell so much. But these are all people that if you just were at the counter, they turn up and go, beep, 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 stick it in the bag and off they go. You also don't get the conversion. So it really is like an ultimate upsell for people. And people who are very driven to really get product out there. It's something which sells easy. People love it. They get a lot from it when they give it to their dog. You very rarely find people who buy a dog ice cream and don't actually really enjoy giving it as a treat. Because if you think, was it retail for £3, something like this, £3.25? I mean, that's the same price as a decent chew, and it will last you as long, if not longer. It's a lot more interactive. And it's just a nice change because we give dogs chews all the time. So
I mean, it's just wildly Instagrammable. I mean, it is the ultimate visual thing. Watching a big dog or a small dog, but getting one between their paws and working at it. It's a real pleasure to watch it, actually.
So do you get much feedback from actual stores yourself? Do you actually go around the stores at all, or is it literally when people contact you?
It's mostly people contacting us, but I think I said earlier that we brought it in house, and when we brought it in house, brought the manufacturing in house, we just kept it at a sort of maintenance level while we were doing that transition because we didn't want to mess it up. Now we're putting quite a bit more effort behind it. So come the new year, we'll be launching at least one new flavor. And at that point, we're going to put more proactive. God, I'm using a whole lot of useless words, but a lot more. God, business bingo here. We're just going to be a lot more active at going out and talking to people. So we really probably. I mean, just to be honest, we haven't done that much active going around pet shops for the last year. Because we've been bringing it in house and just making sure that's totally bedded down and perfect. And now we're about to hit it up. And we were talking earlier about, doing good writing. And, actually I was so impressed by one of your other guests, Pixie, when on her talk about, Instagram and social media about blogging and social media. And I think that's something that, we need to do a lot more of as well. And so, watch this space.
Because it's funny as well. The other thing as well is that for every one person that does contact you, there's 10 that doesn't, like as a manufacturer. And look, I know people used to moan to me about brands, but did they ever contact those brands? Like never. Like it's funny because I had somebody tagged me in a Facebook post there recently saying, and somebody was there, "Oh, this company, they're no longer doing this size of the treats I used to buy. It's because they're a big company now and they don't care about the little people." And someone tagged me because they knew I knew someone from that company. And so I spoke to the person and they were like, "Yeah, no, just get them to contact me. I'll sort them out. I'll make sure that they don't lose out." But it's like people will go and vent online, but they won't contact the company. So it's just getting out there and letting people know you're a real person, I think, is really important. And I think we often forget this. We often, like when you're a brand, we don't interact enough. I mean, when I, on all the Bug Factory, let's say videos, it's me doing the videos, but then I would go and do the shows, and the amount of people who would go, "Oh, I've seen your video," and I've seen you online and that sort of stuff. And you'd be like, "Oh, wicked," it's like, yeah, it's me, it's still me, it's and just actually people recognizing that you're a real person, and we need to do that. We need to do that through writing. We need to do it because, I think, Pixie.
But I'm going to take that as a glass half full thing rather than the glass half empty, and say a lot of people don't do it. And so if you do it, you're ahead of the game. It's really exciting. I think if you're willing to put yourself out there, you're already quite a long way down the process, if that makes sense. I think, because so many brands are quite anonymous. And again, let me talk about another industry. If you look at something like gin, there are like, actually, I probably shouldn't go there, but I mean, there are like so many artisanal gins, and then you find actually that 95% of them are made in the same sort of factory in Manchester. All it is somebody shoving a great label on a pretty, potentially generic product. And I think that, so it does breed quite a lot of cynicism through the system. It can breed some cynicism through the system, but you can obviously completely overcome that if you're the face of the brand and you are out there and talking and responding. I mean, obviously responding is so tricky because you've got about 10 different ways that people can get hold of you these days. And but you do have to monitor it. And if people contact us, I'd be really disappointed if we don't have a grown-up response back to them within 24 hours. It's just, I think it's a courtesy. And you can turn people around as well. I mean, we've, on the ice cream side, we'll get stuff wrong. But you can turn people around and make them loyalists by saying, well, I'm sorry, we sold you a blackcurrant ripple and it didn't have any ripple in, but actually it's because we make it by hand, and, we've looked at our system and realized where that went wrong, and that's why it went wrong, and we've corrected it, and, have a free ice cream on us, but we're sorry. And actually they're then right back, oh, thank you so much. And you've turned a negative into a real positive. So I think that sort of, that interaction is critical. And
But it's the human accountability. I think people forget that. I think that is so important. People, look, everyone makes mistakes, company makes mistakes, but it's actually when you contact them that somebody actually replies and sorts the problem out. That I've made lots of mistakes running a business, but when somebody contacted me and said, look, they may have got 100 items on an order, one thing was put on wrong, they're screaming about that one thing. But if they say to me, look, this isn't right, I need this for a customer, I'll say, yeah, no problem. Next day you've got it. Or if I'm going past it this afternoon, you will get it. It will be sorted, no problem. And then that flips them from being, you're ruining my day to actually, he sorts out problems. And it gives them a sense of surety as well, that if there is a problem in the future, that they can actually contact you again.
Yeah, but I think, it all comes, to some extent it comes at a cost though. And I do find, which is, Doggy Doggy Yum Yum costs a bit more because we care about what goes into it and we care about the service. But all of that does translate to an element of a higher price. And I do sometimes find that you get this sort of sense, well, the lowest price in the industry is that, so that's what you need to match. And well, we're doing quite a lot more than that. So, you don't only focus on price. And actually that's again a sort of message to people, I think, is if you sort of work backwards from what's the lowest price and then can you match that or not? We won't. But just add an extra 10p to the selling price, and you've covered the extra cost from us selling it to you. But you've got probably a better product and potentially a better relationship and everything else. So you can cure these problems, I think.
You've probably heard me say this before, but price is important, but it's not as important as you think. It has to be within the realms of normality. You can't have a doggy ice cream for 15 quid for a little tub. But if it's £3.25 or £3.50 or £2.99, no one gives a monkeys. It doesn't really matter. Then it becomes a choice of, because it's still a luxury buy. It's still a non-necessary buy. It's something you're doing as a treat. And if you think about, the variations in buying a bottle of Coca-Cola, if you go into one shop, it's 80p and somewhere else is £2. If you want that bottle of Coca-Cola, actually you're not really thinking about the extra pound here and there. You're thinking, well, what's the thing that I actually want the most, And so I think people get too hung up on price. Price is important, but when it comes to retail, end user, it's not as important as people like to think it is,
Yeah, I agree, absolutely.
So you also, a big part of your business is you also do so give a bit back to the animal community. I don't know if you'd like to tell us all about that.
Because thanks for that. Because we sort of, Doggy Doggy came out of us sort of liking dogs and wanting dog owners to have a nice experience. We thought, well, let's try and give something back. So we give 5p per tub to dog charities, and the dog charity that we're using this year, and we're pretty in love with this dog charity, so I think we'll keep going with them, is Dogs for Good. Which, did you know about Dogs for Good? Okay, so I think it's a brilliant charity. So it basically does. It's sort of like guide dogs, but guide dogs at a much higher level. So it deals with mental people with mental challenges as well as physical challenges. And so these dogs are trained. I think the training's a year long. They are very, very, very well trained, and they're particularly for things like severe autism. It rings such a strong bell to me that, whenever you see somebody with a dog and you've got that incredible bond and things, and particularly for people who have learning disabilities or whatever, to have a dog in their life that's well trained, I think is an astonishing life. It's just totally and utterly life changing. But it's expensive to train the dogs. I think it's $2,500 per dog to train them. So it's not cheap, but that's the charity we're supporting at the moment. I think they're just really, they're those sort of good people that makes you feel both good and bad in oneself, because they're such good people. They do a really good job. So we love supporting them.
But no, that's fantastic. Like I say, it's always nice to support like important things like that, because dogs are fantastic animals, and the support they can give us. I mean, like the support they give me, and I luckily don't have a disability, but there's a lot of people out there who really need that support, and the fact that you're putting a bit of your profits into that is important. Like, it's something I appreciate as a company.
It's funny, actually. I know this sounds really cheesy, but it's the one check I quite like writing each month, is like that. The rest of them, I'm like, do we have to pay this now? Bloody hell. But, that's what I'm like, brilliant. Dogs for Good. Happy to get them. It's
the one check you write out of choice. That's what it is. All the others, all the others, not so much. Yeah. So what's the future plans in terms of products? Because I'm kind of excited to see what the new flavors will be like, if you'll have different twists, because obviously your first one is pretty unusual in the fact that it's a small amount of ingredients made with like coconut milk, keeper's mix. I'm kind of intrigued to see what's coming around the corner, to be honest.
Yeah, well, we've got an incredible, just a wall of products coming through for the ice cream. What we specialize in is seasonal products, and preferably local. So, things that we're looking to see how we could use apple. Our dogs love apples. I don't know. So we're looking at how we could use local apples. Dorset, obviously, quite famous for apples, so that's an easy one. Local to us, also in Hampshire, is Summerdown Mint. They do a really good mint, and so we're looking to see whether we could use that. Sorry. Excuse me. We're sort of looking. We're in product development stage at the moment to roll out a couple more flavors, which will come with which will, I think, be quite transformational for Doggy Doggy, because they're going to come very strong. Doggy Doggy Yum Yum itself uses this very bright yellow and black. The next one will be, I think, purple and black, and then the next one will be, I can't remember what color. I think it's a blue. So they've got very sort of strong independent identities. Each have their own sort of rescue dog attached to it. So hopefully it'll be nice for pet shops, because suddenly you'll have like 3 in the shop. That just has more visual bang to it. So really, but it's just more of the same, really. It's working with distributors. If people don't want to use a distributor, coming to us and we'll, send it to them. Keeping working with the non-pet industry. And then we're also, we've just been approached by a distributor in the Middle East, and we don't know anything about that industry. So we know nothing. I'm not even going to pretend I know anything about it, but that is potentially interesting to export. I mean, not least because it's warm in the winter, so there might be some sales in the winter, which would be helpful. So yeah, we really want to grow this. We're not experts in the pet industry, so anybody that wants to tell me how to do it, please tell me. We want to keep growing it. I think we like the people we work with, and so far so good. I think really.
The Middle East is a very strong growing part of the industry. There's a real boom over there, and they love innovation in the Middle East. And believe it or not, my second biggest, most listened to country isn't from, you'd assume it would be the US. The US is number 4, I think. My most listened country on this podcast is actually a Middle Eastern country. So the Middle East is a very, very busy area, but it's also an area where people are very focused on the industry, very focused on innovation. And if you ever go to, let's say, some of the pet trade shows there, like Pets Arabia and stuff like that, very, very driven, very interesting market. So no, I think it sounds really good. I think it could be a very good market for you, to be honest. Awesome. So Sam, if people want to get hold of you, they want to take you in store, what's your minimum orders if I'm a retailer, I want it to stock, and let's say I'm not going through pedigree, what would be a minimum order, and how can I get to you? And if I'm a stockist and I'm a pedigree stockist, and I say, you know what, I'd love a sign outside my shop, I'd love to talk about a mini freezer, how's the best way of getting hold of you?
hello@doggydoggyumyum.com is the simplest way to get hold of me. And that will come through, and me or the team will pick it up and talk to you. Minimum orders, it does slightly depend on location, and we'd obviously prefer people to work through pedigree if they do. If they've got a relationship with pedigree, then that's a no-brainer. But otherwise, we'd like them to buy 4 boxes. So that's 48 tubs, and that translates to just under 80 quid.
Which is not outrageous at all, to be fair. Especially when you take what the margin would be. It's
we're not making a huge margin on that, but I just would at the moment, it's just really getting it out there, building it up.
And they can always stick some of your Babu ice cream.
Well, it's funny that we have, that's not a joke. We've definitely won customers by starting with the dog and then just sort of saying, well, I have a couple of samples of the human one. And they're like, oh, that's nice too.
That's right. I'll sell these in the shop and I'll take these home for after dinner. Yeah, no, that sounds awesome.
But actually, I'm not joking. We make this to a human standard. So people do eat. We're not suggesting you do, but people do eat Doggy Doggy as just a vegan ice cream.
Yeah. And it's got the keepers mix in it as well, so it'd be great.
Keeps that coat shiny.
Thanks a million, Sam. I really appreciate this.
Oh, Clayton, a pleasure. Thanks very much for having me on. And I just want to say, it's a brilliant podcast. I've learned a lot. I learned a lot. So thank you.
Oh, I really appreciate that. It's always nice to hear because, I think in my head, it's just me shouting out into the world, and so it's always nice that people are getting something back. Means it's worthwhile, So no, I really appreciate that. Oh, thanks a million.